The Dell G3 is a well-priced gaming laptop from Dell's G series, and probably a more budget option compared to the G5 or G7. So let's check it out and help you decide if it's a laptop worth buying. Let's start with the specs in this unit, as there are a few different configurations available. I've got the highest spec G3 with the Intel i7-8750H CPU, although it's also available with the i5-8300H. I've got 16GB of DDR4 2666 memory running in dual channel, but it's also available with 8GB in single or dual channel configurations, and it supports up to 32GB of memory in total. There are a number of different storage configurations too, but I've got a 256GB M.2 SATA SSD and 2TB hard drive installed, although faster NVMe storage is also supported by the single M.2 slot. For the graphics, there's an NVIDIA 1060 Max-Q, although it's also available with 1050 or 1050 Ti graphics, and this powers the 17.3-inch 1080p 60Hz IPS panel. For the network connectivity, there's a gigabit Ethernet port, support for 802.11ac Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth. The laptop is completely plastic with a matte black lid, and then a grey and black checkerboard pattern for the interior, although it's also available in white. It's got blue accenting all around it, for example around the touchpad, the keys, the logo under the screen, and on the lid. Despite the plastic build, overall it was still fairly solid, and no sharp corners or edges anywhere. The dimensions of the laptop are 41.5cm in width, 27.9cm in depth, and 2.5cm in height. So not exactly thin for a Max-Q laptop, but not bad for a 17-inch machine. The starting weight for the lowest spec model is listed at 3.27 kilos, although mine weighed under 3 kilos even with the hard drive installed. With the 180-watt power brick and cable for charging, the total weight increases to around 3.6 kilos. And with the 1050 or 1050 Ti models, you get a 130-watt power brick instead, which I suspect may be a touch lighter. Also keep in mind the 15-inch model will not only be smaller, but will also have a different weight. As mentioned, the screen here is a 17.3-inch 60Hz 1080p IPS panel. No G-Sync available here though. The viewing angles on the screen were good. It looked great at just about any angle thanks to the IPS panel. The screen gets bright enough at 306 nits when at 100% brightness in the center with a 740:1 contrast ratio. Based on my own measurements, the bezel was about a centimeter thick, although I suspect that may vary with the 15-inch model. I've also measured the current color gamut using the Spider 5 Pro, and my results return 91% of sRGB, 68% of NTSC, and 71% of Adobe RGB. So not too bad for something marketed primarily as a gaming laptop. I've taken a long exposure photo in a dark room as a worst case backlight bleed test, and we can see there is some bleed. I could actually occasionally notice the top left spot during normal usage from time to time, but this will vary between laptops. Again, keep in mind all of these screen results are specific to the LG panel in the 17-inch G3. I haven't tested the 15-inch version, so can't compare them. There wasn't too much screen flex as it's made out of fairly thick plastic, and the hinge runs along most of the base of the laptop, further aiding stability. Opening the laptop with one finger wasn't possible as the hinge is quite stiff. Although I wouldn't say it was too back heavy, I could still use it on my lap no problem. Above the display in the center is a 720p camera. The camera doesn't look too bad with some lighting, and the microphone sounds decent, but you'll be able to judge both for yourself. The keyboard has blue lettering, so you can see it quite easily even with the backlighting off. And my model also has blue backlighting. I'm not sure if that will vary between regions and models though, as my G5 didn't have backlighting while others did. The backlighting can be adjusted between two brightness levels or turned off using a button on the keyboard, no software control. As a 17-inch laptop, there's room to adequately space out the keys, so the numpad isn't cramped either. Although we still have those annoyingly small arrow keys the other G-series laptops also use. I had no problems typing with the keyboard otherwise. Here's how the key presses sound to try and give you an idea of what to expect. There was a little keyboard flex while intentionally pushing down hard, but honestly it was fairly minor and not an issue while typing normally. Overall it was quite solid considering the plastic body. The power button is found towards the top right of the keyboard, and while my model doesn't have a fingerprint reader here, Dell note that it is available. so again, it may vary between region or model. The touchpad worked alright. It's got separate left and right click buttons down the bottom, but you can left click anywhere or 2-finger right click anywhere. It's got a matte texture and it wasn't that smooth to the touch. As for the I/O, on the left there's the power input, USB Type-C Thunderbolt 3 port, HDMI 2.0 output, Gigabit Ethernet, 2 USB 3.1 Gen 1 Type-A ports, and a 3.5mm audio combo jack. On the right, there's an SD card slot, USB 3.1 Gen 2 Type-A port, and Noble lock slot. The back is mostly smooth plastic, with the G3 logo on the side. But under the plastic are the air exhaust vents, which are hidden from view, forcing air downwards out the back. The front is also just smooth plastic. Up on the lid, there's a blue Dell logo in the center, matching the blue accenting found elsewhere. Fingerprints show up on the lid, although the matte texture hides them a little compared to a glossy finish. And as a smooth surface, they're easy to wipe off. As the interior has this checkerboard pattern, they're harder to notice here, but still easy to wipe away. Underneath, there's some air intakes towards the back to keep everything cool, as well as some rubber feet that do a good job of stopping the laptop from easily moving around while in use. The speakers are found towards the front left and right corners. They sound alright, there's no bass at all, but they do get loud enough and sound clear. The bottom panel can be opened up easily with a Phillips head screwdriver once you remove the 12 screws. Inside, from left to right, we get easy access to the single 2.5-inch drive bay, the battery, 2 memory slots, single M.2 slot, and Wi-Fi card. Powering the laptop is a 4-cell 56Wh battery, and with a full charge and just watching YouTube videos with the screen on half brightness, keyboard lighting off, and background apps disabled, I was able to use it for 5 hours and 2 minutes. It was using the Intel integrated graphics in this test, thanks to NVIDIA Optimus. While playing The Witcher 3 with medium settings and NVIDIA's battery boost set to 30 FPS, the battery lasted for 1 hour and 14 minutes. And it sat at 30 FPS the whole time without dipping. Overall, I thought the battery life was acceptable, considering the fairly decent hardware we're running. Thermal testing was completed with an ambient room temperature of 18 degrees Celsius, so expect warmer temperatures in a warmer environment. I'll also note that it wasn't possible to manually modify the fan speed of the G3, so all temperatures were with the fans at default speeds. Starting at the bottom of the graph, at idle the CPU and GPU are running cool enough, shown in light blue. Moving up to the green bar, I've tested gaming using Watch Dogs 2, as it uses a good amount of CPU and GPU resources, and this rose the temperatures a fair bit. If we apply a -0.150 volt undervolt to the CPU, we're able to drop the temperature slightly, shown in yellow. The stress tests were done by running Ada64 and the Heaven benchmark at the same time, in order to attempt to fully utilize both the processor and graphics. Moving up in the graph to the red bar, there was power limit throttling present, fairly standard with the 8750H CPU under stress test. By applying the same -0.150 volt undervolt to the CPU in purple, the temperature actually rose slightly. But as we'll see in the next graph, it's now performing much better. These are the average clock speeds for the same temperature tests just shown. The green gaming and red stress test bars were subject to power limit throttling, which is why only a 3.4 GHz average was seen over all 6 cores. But performance was improved with the -0.150 volt undervolt applied. In particular, the purple bar shows that we're very close to getting the full 3.9 GHz all-core turbo speed of the 8750H CPU. These are the clock speeds I got while just running CPU-only stress tests without any GPU load. The power limit throttling was still taking place at stock, although there was no thermal throttling. With the -0.150 volt undervolt applied though, we're able to reach the full 3.9 GHz all-core turbo speed of the i7 8750H CPU. And I'll also note that it wasn't possible to change the power limit from the 45W TDP default with Intel XTU. To demonstrate how this translates into performance, I've got some Cinebench CPU benchmarks here, with the older 7th gen 7700HQ just there for comparison. We're able to improve the score by over 100 points by applying the CPU undervolt, and no real difference between either in terms of single core performance, as single core alone isn't enough to trigger power limit throttling. Here are my GPU-only clock speeds while under a graphical-only stress test, both at stock and with a 200MHz GPU core overclock applied. But it's worth noting that your CPU undervolting and GPU overclocking results will vary between chips based on the silicon lottery. As for the external temperatures where you'll actually be putting your hands, at idle the body of the laptop is peaking in the low 30s, quite cool. While gaming, the wrist rest was still cool. but the center of the keyboard starts approaching 50 degrees, and with the stress tests running, we saw a similar result. As for the fan noise produced by the laptop, I'll let you have a listen to some of these tests. At idle, it was almost silent, only just audible. While gaming, the fans pick up, but overall it's still a fair bit quieter compared to most other gaming laptops, likely due to the Max-Q graphics. And then about the same results with the stress tests running. I'll also note that there was no noticeable coil whine while testing in my unit. Finally, let's take a look at some benchmarks. All games run at 1080p with the latest Nvidia drivers and Windows updates to date installed. No overclocking at this point, but we'll look at that afterwards. Fortnite was tested with the replay feature, and even at epic settings we're seeing pretty nice results, above 60 FPS averages, so it's running quite smoothly, with higher frame rates available at lower setting levels, although it's worth keeping in mind the G3 only has a 60Hz display. Overwatch was tested in the practice area, and again, even at epic settings it was running perfectly, with 1% lows that were above the refresh rate of the display and an average frame rate above 100. PUBG was tested using the replay feature. The results at ultra settings aren't great, which isn't too surprising as it isn't a very well optimized game. At lower setting levels, the results are decent enough to play well though. Shadow of the Tomb Raider was tested with the built-in benchmark, and this is after a recent game-ready driver for the game from Nvidia. In any case, the results don't seem too bad at the lower setting levels. CSGO was tested using the Uletical benchmark, and the frame rates were alright for this test. Actually slightly better than when I tested the G5 with the same specs a few months ago. Rainbow Six Siege was tested with the built-in benchmark, and we're still able to average well above 100 FPS even at ultra settings, again with fairly high 1% lows, so this game should run pretty smoothly without any problems. Far Cry 5 was also tested with the built-in benchmark, and with ultra settings we're just able to average above 60 FPS. A pretty nice result for this particular test, with 1% lows that aren't too far behind. Assassin's Creed Origins was another game that was tested with the built-in benchmark. The results aren't too bad, as this is a more demanding title, although I don't think it needs super high frame rates to play anyway. Dota 2 was tested using a fairly intensive replay, so this should be a worst case scenario. These results are not the same as playing the actual game. This benchmark is far more intensive than typical gameplay. And despite this, the frame rates are pretty good for these specs. Testing Battlefield 1 in the first campaign mission ran nicely regardless of setting level. It played great for me even at ultra settings, with 1% low results around the refresh rate of the display, so even the dips in performance weren't too bad. Watch Dogs 2 was a somewhat demanding game, although I don't think it needs a high frame rate to play, and it played great at high settings, still playable at higher settings but not as good, as shown by the 1% lows in the 20s. Ghost Recon was tested with a built-in benchmark, and is also a demanding game. Pretty much no laptops can really run this at ultra settings, so no surprise there, but definitely playable with lower settings. The Witcher 3 was almost able to average 60 FPS at ultra settings. Granted, that's with Hairworks disabled, but it was running much nicer at basically any other setting level, and the 1% lows didn't really change much between settings. I've got a few more games covered in the dedicated gaming benchmark video if you're interested. Now onto the benchmarking tools. I've tested Heaven, Valley, and Superposition from Unigine, as well as Firestrike, TimeSpy, and VRMark from 3DMark. Just pause the video if you want a detailed look at these results. I've said in the past that the Nvidia 1060 graphics are an excellent choice in a gaming laptop if you're looking to play modern games at 1080p with high settings and still get nice frame rates. And my previous testing has shown that the Max-Q 1060 is only about 10% behind the 1060. So we're still seeing pretty nice results in these games. But again, if you go for the G3 with 1050 Ti or 1050 graphics, then expect lower results. As for overclocking, although it's not possible to overclock the 8750H CPU, it is possible to overclock the graphics. I've just retested a couple of games to demonstrate how this affects performance. Testing was done with the same minus 0.150V undervolt to the CPU as shown before, along with the 200MHz GPU core overclock and 400MHz GPU memory overclock. CSGO was tested again with the Uletical benchmark, and with the changes in place, the 1% lows are slightly higher and average frame rates at max settings are about 7% better, but then no real change at the other setting levels. Far Cry 5 was tested again using the built-in benchmark, And again, at ultra settings, there was a similar 7% boost to the average frame rates in this game, with higher 1% lows all round. So we're seeing a little improvement with the CPU undervolting and GPU overclocking applied, although it will depend on the particular game in question and setting levels in use. In Crystal Diskmark, the 256GB M.2 SATA SSD was getting above 500MB per second in sequential reads and above 300MB per second in sequential writes. But it's also worth remembering the laptop does support faster NVMe storage too. Here are the speeds for the 2TB 5400 RPM hard drive that was installed. Fairly average for this type of disk. I've also tested the SD card slot using a V90 rated card, so the card shouldn't be the bottleneck, and the speeds weren't anything special. Pricing will change over time, so check the links in the description for the most up-to-date prices. At the time of recording, here in Australia, the 17-inch Dell G3 starts at around 1,700 Australian dollars while on sale, and goes up to 2,500 Australian dollars for the same specs as the one featured in this video. Over on the US site though, the 17-inch G3 starts at $880 for the lowest specs, or is $1,300 for the exact specs featured here. So what did you guys think of the G3 gaming laptop from Dell? The prices seem quite fair. Dell's gaming series laptops have generally been pretty competitive, although depending on current sales, you may be able to get the same specs at a better price with the G5, so check that before buying. With these particular specs, we can play pretty much any game with good settings at 1080p without getting too hot or loud. The battery life was fair, and aside from the cheaper feeling plastic build compared to the metal of the G5 and G7, I can't really think of any problems that I had with it without nitpicking further. It's not doing anything extremely well, but it's also not doing anything really bad. I guess it just seems fairly average. You're getting what you pay for. Let me know what you guys thought down in the comments, and leave a like to let me know if you found the review useful. And also let me know if you'd be interested in seeing the G3 compared with the G5 or G7, keeping in mind that I've got the 17-inch model of the G3 here, whereas I tested the G5 and G7 with the 15-inch versions. So that may affect things like cooling performance slightly. But if you still think it's worth doing, let me know. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for future tech videos like this one.